I'm Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here with Emmy-nominated Annie Live choreographer Sergio Trujillo. It's a famous musical, of course, that's been adapted and revived multiple times. So did you have like a relationship with Annie before working on this production, or what was your experience?
You know, actually, the last time I had seen Annie was in 1982. I remember lining up. I lived in Canada at the time, and I remember I was a young boy, young man, and I remember lining up for hours to get into this movie, this new remake of Annie, and I was mesmerized by it. But so that was my last encounter with Annie. Obviously, you know, I knew about the musical, I knew about all of the history, but in essence, that was really it. That was the last time.
And did you go back and look at other versions of Annie before you worked on this one, or did you want to go into this production as fresh as possible for your own interpretation?
Um, I actually, you know, I thought I started a lot of the libretto and the music from the original, from the Broadway show. I thought it was important for me to really revisit this with fresh eyes. I put a lot of pressure on myself because I know that Robbie Marshall had done one, I don't remember when, in the 90s, which had gotten rave reviews, and it was an apparently a really amazing remake of it. So I saw glimpses of a couple of things, but I really resisted it all because I really wanted it to have my own point of view.
And you're specifically nominated for the routines Hard Knock Life and We Got Annie. What made you choose those numbers for consideration?
Well, you know, it was a tough. I mean, this is my second time being nominated. I didn't know really the protocols, and then I was like, okay, great. So you know, now you can watch the whole show. But I actually didn't know. So it was tough. It was tough for me to decide whether I was going to do that or actually it was for Hard Knock Life, We Got Annie, and NYC. Um, and I think what was important for me was to really present the numbers that I felt had the strongest storytelling through choreography, because I think that that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this musical, and which was a discovery of mine. You know, when I started to really dig into the material, to the script, to the music, you know, Annie's Annie, and you think is this frothy musical, but it has huge opportunities for choreography, huge opportunities for a choreographer. But ultimately, what was most important to me was to be able to figure out a way of advance the plot. You know, how to use dance as narrative as opposed to just dance numbers. And I remember that, yeah, I think Joe Layton was the original choreographer in 1982. That's the thing that impressed me the most when I saw it back then was, you know, how he used choreography to tell the story, and that was very important to me. So Hard Knock Life, We Got Annie, and NYC to me felt like they had the strongest narrative.
And Ann Reinking performed We Got Annie in the 1982 film, which are some big shoes to fill. What did it mean to you to choreograph a number that she had previously performed?
So Anne Ranking is a personal friend of mine, and I'd had a history with Annie. As a dancer, I performed in the show Fosse on Broadway, and it was Annie who taught me the choreography. It was Annie who taught me the choreography of many of the numbers. So I had a relationship with Annie. Um, you know, interesting enough, what we were choreographing, what we were doing, Annie passed away, and it became a personal uh, sort of journey for me to make sure that I created this number in her memory, that I pay homage to her, and really I had her on my shoulder the entire time. Needless to say, I had Nicole Scherzinger with me, who is a really a real discovery. It was a discovery for me because I didn't know she was a real triple threat. I mean, you know, there not too many, you know, triple threats out there, and I can surely say that she is one of them. So it was a really wonderful and important opportunity for me to again create a number that pay homage to Annie and yet had my own point of view.
And you know, naturally, Annie has a lot of child performers. Had you had much experience before this choreographing for younger dancers?
Yeah. I actually, so 20 years ago, I choreographed Sound of Music. That was the last time I choreographed for kids. And then just before that, I had done a Bronx Tale, but there was only one kid. And before that, Adam's Family, which had two kids. So never 12, 14 kids. And I got to tell you that also I've also recently become a dad of a 4-year-old boy. So um, what I loved really, I think the highlight of this particular experience, which was choreographed in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, let's not forget the pandemic's still with us. Um, we were at the height of it. We had to take all of the precautions. We all wore masks to rehearsal. These little girls wore masks to rehearsals, but their resilience, their spirit, the joy, the passion, their unconditional love for what they did for song and dance and acting, of course, was so infectious that it really, really fulfilled me to no extent. And as a matter of fact, when I was choreographing a hard knot, like the hard knot, like the whole time I was thinking, if these girls love the number, then I've done my job. And sure enough, these girls, no matter how many times I did it, no matter how many times I rehearsed it, they were always there, full on, 100%.
And yeah, one of the great things about you being nominated for these particular routines is that you do get that that range. You get to see your work with the child performers and the adult actors and dancers. Is there a major difference in your approach as a choreographer, or because the kids are obviously such pros, like you can see that coming through in the show. Is there much difference in choreographing the two?
Well, actually, well, yes, as I mentioned, I think what surprised me about this show was the range of the choreography, or at least there was just like a sort of canon of all kinds of movement, which to your point, yes, I had to use choreography that was specific for the kids, and then I had to create choreography for someone like Nicole or Taraji Henson, who was Miss Hannigan, and then Harry Connick Jr. as well, who is obviously so gifted, such a trooper, and up for anything. Yeah, no, I love that challenge. I really did love getting up in the morning and going to work and figuring out how to make these actors look the best they could look, and pushing myself to figure out a way of reinventing this musical, this beloved musical.
And the show is shot at Gold Coast Studios in New York. How important is that physical space and understanding that in developing the choreography?
Well, I think for first and foremost, we were doing a live musical, right? So it's a world that I know very well. I know Broadway very well. But I'd spent a lot of time out in California, so and had danced on the Academy Awards, music videos, movies, and so on and so forth. So what was most important to me while I was working on this piece was really to imagine the choreography through the lens, never in a proscenium, but rather really working with the camera always. So and I was very inspired to know that Alec Radzinski, who was our TV director, who had done quite a few of those. He did Jesus Christ Superstar in Greece. I loved his work. I admire his work. I understood the style in which he shot. So the entire time that I was choreographing, I was using my iPhone. And what I did was I choreographed every single number with a Steadicam so that I never, ever stopped the shot. And so more than the physical production, it was more about really figuring out how it was going to be shot. Because I know that also the time is very limited in these things. These live musicals, they may seem easy on television, but they're quite challenging, because not only are you doing a Broadway show, but then you're adding the TV portion to it, and then so it becomes even bigger than life.
And how long was that process from the moment you started work on the show to the moment the show went live?
It was 4 weeks of rehearsal, which is the 4 weeks that we get in a Broadway show. A week in the live studio rehearsing, putting the numbers onto the set, and then 3 days of camera block, and then a dress rehearsal, and then there you are. So it was quick. And that's, again, for me, what was really useful, and because of Broadway, for me, it's so important to be prepared always. And the pre-production that I did for this show was quite extensive with my associates, Paul McGill and Morgan Marcel. And so we prepared all these numbers. Every single detail was choreographed before I walked into those rehearsals.
And when the show eventually does go live, you having experienced this a lot on Broadway and having worked on TV as well before, is there a confidence that goes into that show, or do you still get like the nerves, like everything's going to go off without a hitch?
Well, it was interesting. So we did our dress rehearsal, but the dress rehearsal means that you're shooting it. They're shooting, and they also shooting the dress rehearsal in case of an emergency, right? In case something happens. There's nothing I can do. And my work is done. It was so, when I do a Broadway show, I have previews in which I work through the show, and I change, finesse, this number doesn't work. We've worked, and that happens for a period of 4 weeks. We get one dress rehearsal in this, which is shot, which means that my hands are tied. And so the day of the show, when you're watching it happen, it's happening live, is exhilarating. It was like, for me, shudder of a cannon, really. I mean, and nerve-wracking, but exhilarating nonetheless.
And since there's a lot of prop work, and a lot of these settings have an impact on the choreography, what was the collaboration with like the art department like? Was there a lot of back and forth, and the lighting department, knowing where focus was going to be and when?
Yeah, of course. Jason Sherwood, who is our production designer, we had a lot of conversations about, they're just, again, having had the time to prepare, and really I got a lot of his support in terms of facilitating my vision. Something as simple as the brooms that they use, the mops that they use in one of the numbers, which had to be, they had to be a certain weight, and they had to spin, and they had to be strong enough, and they had to be a certain height. Or the tables that the guys do the flips on, that it has to be a certain height. The trays have to have the prop stuck on them so that they don't, when they dance, that they don't flip out, or the cart that she gets pulled on. All of those details, of course, have to be worked out, and anything can happen on the day. So we try to prepare ourselves for the worst. But I guess, I think, again, it's just if one can be, sort of have a hindsight, and it specifically be prepared and understand what goes into that vision, then you see, there's less stress, really.
And as you mentioned before, this is your second Emmy nomination. You were nominated last year for Christmas in Rockefeller Center. Having come from Broadway and having choreographed there and winning a Tony, what does it mean to also be recognized for your work in TV, and how different that is to choreograph for the camera?
Well, I think look, to get a nomination, to be honored in that way, to get the validation from the community, I think is really not to be ignored, and I take the compliment very seriously. I'm proud of the work that the entire team did. Lear DeBazonet, our director, our TV director, Alex Rosinski, our entire cast, our producers, Bob Greenblatt and Neil Marin, who are dream to work with, to be able to be recognized for the work that we do. It is always an honor.
And you've been, in this industry for many years now, dancing and choreographing. What inspired you to pursue dance as a career?
Look, I'm very lucky. I was born in Colombia. My family immigrated to Canada, but I've always had surrounding me is dance. In Cali, which is where I'm from, all that people love is dancing. If you could ever YouTube Cali salsa, and you'll see how insane they dance salsa music, but they dance it in a way that I can't even. It's all about the footwork, but more than anything, is the passion that the culture has instilled in me. And so, ever since I was a little boy, I knew I was going to be a dancer. And ever since I was a little boy, I knew I was going to be a choreographer and I was going to direct. But I owe a lot of that to the culture, to being Latin and listening and loving music, through the rhythm of what I know. So it's always instilled in me a great love for the art form.
And do you have any like dream shows that you would most love to get a chance to work on, or dream collaborators who you'd most love to get a chance to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I grew up loving and being a fan of Debbie Allen. Debbie Allen then became my mentor. I assisted her, I danced for her. I would love to, and I was there last year. What was wonderful was last year I was at the Emmy Awards when she was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it was like full circle for me. So for me to be able to work with Debbie in that capacity in a world that she knows very well, and for us to collaborate on a special project would be a dream come true.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your latest Emmy nomination, and more to come. Knock on wood. And thank you so much for talking to me today about it. It's been a pleasure.
Daniel, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for talking to me today.